Early Game Guide, Part 1 of a three-part series by SMA. Early Game Tier List. Um, this is SMA's guide to dominating early game from stage 2-1 to 4-1. Today I'll be talking about what units are strong. Um, some rules that I use to rank the units are that one, they will have limited synergies like 3 Warlords, 3 Dragon Souls versus 6 Warlords and 6 Dragon Souls. They'll have 1 to 2 items for each specific unit. And for 1 cost, we'll assume they'll be 2-starred. For 2 costs, we'll assume they'll be 2-starred. And 3 costs, we'll assume they're 1 star around 2-1, and around 3-1, we'll assume they're 2 stars. For 4 costs, we'll assume that they're 1 star around 3-1 to 3-6, and 5 costs, we'll assume they're 1 star around 4-1. Now, 3 to 4 to 5 costs are all part of the mid game guide and the late game guide coming up later on. So, basic example comps. In the early game, it's really hard to force a comp because of like the limited resources you're given and not a lot of gold you're provided. But it is important to understand what is the strongest units for each comp in the meta currently. Using this tier list, hopefully I'll be able to explain and help you improve your early game by understanding what are the key units to play. So we'll start with 1 cost. At Garen, Tristana, Fiora, and Maokai, all at the S tier, with Wukong, Elise, and Tom on the A tier. And then you can notice that Diana, Brand, and Nidalee rest at the C and D tier. Some notes that you could take from this is that S plus tier includes Garen, Tristana, as I will provide a further unit breakdown for them. And at D tier, you have Nidalee, Brand, and Diana. Nidalee and Brand just do not provide enough damage as a backline carry for the early game and can be easily shut down by assassins or a stronger backline such as Triss. So unit analysis, Garen. Garen is one of my personal favorites, and thus I put him as S plus tier. Not only is his synergies Warlords and Vanguard's very strong early game, uh, Warlords being he gets 200 HP per stack plus some additional AD and AP. Um, that can stack up to 5 times through Warlords, and Vanguard, which is extra armor throughout the early game, which is really important because early game revolves heavily around AD, unless there's a mage player. Garen is a perfect solo frontliner, which also has an ult that improves his MR stats. So overall, Garen, with a little bit of positioning shown in my next slide, can be proven as an S plus carry. So here's a comp analysis of the Warlord Vanguard sharps. So here, if you just look on the left side, involving Garen, Wukong, Tristana, and Nidalee, this is a basic level 4 comp. Without Chosen, it's just a basic 2 Vanguards, 2 Sharps, but with Chosen, you can flex between Dragon Soul or Warlords. Um, so at level 5, you can go for 3 Warlords with Jarvan 4 or 5, and you usually want to play around the Chosen. So why I did this positioning is because Garen can attract all of the enemy's frontliners and provide a big AoE damage while increasing his own MR stats. Wukong can collect any assassins coming to go for your backline with a, a kind of long stun. With his ults, and Tristana and Nidalee are very strong backliners. Uh, well, Tristana especially in the early game. Another unit that I want to look at is Tristana. So Tristana has recently been on the rise with the Dragon Soul buff. With the Dragon Soul buff, she's allowed to do a lot of burst damage, and not only the burst damage, she can one be rerolled, and two, she can also be a very good item carrier for many of the comps out there. May it be Acel with AP items like Jewel Gauntlets and Hextech, or Slayers with Deathblade, Hurricane, and GA. Tristana is one of the primary 1 cost carries that shine throughout this meta as a unit. Going on to the 2 costs, 2 costs we've seen the continuation of the strength of Annie, Janna, Jax, and Vladimir. These four are currently the strongest, with Braum trying to enter the S rank soon. Um, and at the bottom, we can see Nautilus and Zed, as they are very comp dependent. And without Fabled, Nautilus is not a real unit, and without ninjas and 3 stars, that is also not a unit. Some notes for this graph is S++ tier is Anna and Janna, because they can, with like any team, they can be swapped and put in with their synergies, and they will be able to help support the team infinite. For Janna, they will help provide the front line to be help the front line stay alive for that much longer with extra damage. And Annie can provide a good solo front line with 1 or 2 tank items. S tier is Jack, and Jax, and S minus is Vladimir. Um, I think these are pretty standard and agreed across the community, and these are just very good units, especially with all their utility. 2 cost units are not to be looked down upon. So we'll do a unit analysis on Jax. Jax, similar to Garen, has a large AoE ultimate, which allows him to dodge incoming basic attacks, which is very unique to a 2 cost unit, because not only is he frontline, but he also has a chance to dodge other basic attack damage units like Sivir, Teemo, Nidalee, Tristana. And this can stall a lot of time for your team. And what's more is Jax has a lot of traits that will benefit him as a solo frontliner, as Divine allows damage reduction and true damage, and Duelist allows him to proc his ults a little bit more uh, just before he dies. Jax can either be a really good solo frontliner or duo frontline whenever he pleases. He's very easy to slot in, as I'll explain later on with future comps. The next unit I want to talk about is Annie. Annie is again a really strong frontliner. Put him put her with any items like Hextech, Sunfire, Declaw, and she'll be able to carry you all the way to 4-1 with such a strong frontliner. Um, her but what really shines about her is her traits. Fortune is a really good trait to play in this meta, because it's really easy to cash out with multiple different outs, with like Darius, Katarina, and Annie, all very strong units in the meta currently. And also mages, which, if you get Mage Annie, prepare to start rerolling mages, because I'm pretty sure the most cap board is a fully capped mage board with 3-star Annie, 3-star Lulu, 3-star Veigar. That is truly an unbeatable team. Now I'm gonna go through 5 early game comps that we can analyze together, that I think are the best. So the first one I want to look at is Cultist, and with different variations of Duelist, Keeper, and Syphoner. So usually you want to base this on what you hit and your items. If you get a lot of AP, consider Keeper, Syphoners, and Callista. Callista's ult is also based on AP ratios, which is something you might know for the future. For attack speed, you want to go Callista or Sivir, and if you get pure AD items, consider going Sivir carry, and plus the additions of Sharp, of course. So in this image, you can see at the top, I put my favorite 5 cultists. This is a mix of duelist carry with keepers, but don't shy away from siphoners and duelists, because that gives extra divine with Nasus, or even slot in Pike. Pike provides an ult that is in a range of long stuns. The pros of this board and this comp is that it provides an extra unit, and the synergies go very well until 4-1 and 5-1. Galio is extra CC and extra HP, and you really can't complain about that. One of the cons of this comp, though, is you often play loose cultists without the chosen. So Without the chosen, it is very unfavorable to go for six cultists because you would have to play either a loose TF or a naked Sivir, which are both not very preferable when putting it into your comp. Rather, you want to have a sturdy front line and back line and no loose units. Next comp I want to look at is Brawlers with Shyvana carry. So there's not much to say about this comp except for it provides a lot of raw HP and damage, and they can only work really well together. So how it works is you want to separate your Maokai and Tahm Kench on the sides to provide the first additional hits for the enemy ADCs. That allows Shyvana to get enough time to get her ults and dash away from their front line. From then you can pervert you just let Shyvana do a lot of free hitting with either Elderwood, Synergy, or Dragon Soul, depending on what level, and this would help you win streak. And Shyvana is a really good Slayer holder and subpar A Soul holder. So the pros of this is that everyone on the team is provided with raw HP and AD, and it's a very strong frontline. One con to this comp is that there's very limited backline access. So what that means is their attack damage carries like Sivir or Tristana will not be touched until you melt the front line. The next comp I want to analyze is the Dragon Soul comp. This one recently has gotten a lot of interest because of the burst it provides. Um, so again, it's not a very hard comp to understand. It's two vanguards with sharps with a touch of diesel, but there are small mechanics that you need to maximize. For example, you want to lean Braum over Tristana versus Brand because once Dragon Soul unit dies, it gives the immediate proc to the next Dragon Soul user that it comes to. So instead of giving it to Brand and letting Brand waste it with his low attack speed, you want to give to Tristana, who could proc it maybe one or two more times than a Brand usually would. So the pros to this comp is there's a lot of large bursts early game, and you get to use Braum, which is a very good solo frontliner and tank absorber. And the con to this is without the chosen, you end up usually playing a very loose and useless Bran or Shafana or a naked Olaf, which is not always favorable without the chosen, but sometimes it's just worth it if you haven't picked up a chosen yet. Uh, la- Second last but not least, we get the Divine Syphoner comp. So this was very popular when Nasus reroll was a thing, but you should still not sleep on this comp. This comp's true power comes from its true damage of the Divine proc, and it also comes from just having very strong units overall. It has a very strong front line and sustain with the Vladimir behind the front line. Not only that, Jax and I really provide a lot of CC for the early game, more than it should be. um, the, sh- the con to this comp is that it does not provide enough backline access, and if your Nasus, which recently got nerfed, cannot one shot or two shot the backline carries, there is a very high chance that you go without killing anyone on the board, which is something you never want. But last but not least, the keeper comp analysis. So this one recently has been getting a lot of interest throughout Reddit and the community, as there are many challengers who've climbed up ladder points running solely keepers. But I'm telling you not to force this comp and only to use it when you grab it. So 4 keepers is good enough early game from 2-1 to 4-1, and you can switch anyone out for just any carry unit. For example, Kindred, Callista, or Sivir. Those can all be good units to slot in instead of the Saya. Of course, it's not very. You can't always assume that you'll high roll a Saya or the Keeper Chosen, but if you do, this is a good comp to run. The pros of this comp is there's very high HP shields for all the units, and each unit is overall very strong, especially with cannon buffs and Jarvan CC and Rakan CC. But it's very awkward to position against large AoE damage like Irelia or Morgana, which can be very tricky in the early game, meaning you need to scout a little bit more in the future. So that wraps up my early game unit tier list. Um, Please like, comment, subscribe below. Let me know if you want to see more of this series. I've got 2 more coming out in the weeks to come. Hopefully, you're still interested. My name's Sma. Thanks for coming. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. Okay.